Welcome to E-commerce with Coffee, a podcast powered by Amber Engine, where we share e-com secrets for brands over your favorite brew. We start with the caffeine and then leap enthusiastically into behind-the-scenes e-com insights that led to the success of our guests. I'm Nate Svoboda, and I'm about to serve you up the best. Let's get started. Good morning and welcome to this episode of E-commerce with Coffee. Today we're speaking to Liran Hirschkorn. He's the CEO of Incrementum Digital, which is an agency that helps businesses develop stronger Amazon advertising and marketing strategies in order for them to sell more profitably on that platform. So Liran, pleasure speaking with you this morning.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on. Excited to be here and talk.
Yeah, I'm excited. We're going to talk a little bit about, what's been changing on Amazon between obviously when you started as a seller and then now with this pandemic that we've all just experienced. And then just some of the common mistakes that you see in the Amazon ad strategies that businesses have when they come to begin working with you. But before we dive into it, it's pretty early on my end. So I imagine that you've probably got a coffee there with you. What are you drinking today?
Actually, I just finished a 32-ounce smoothie. So I'm pretty energized, but I will probably have a coffee right after this.
No, that's fair. I mean, sometimes I feel like the smoothie almost gives me a little bit more of that pickup initially, right? Plus, then you're not hungry till lunch, so it works.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually one of the things I try to do is fruit/liquids till noon. So separate podcast episode though.
e-commerce with fruit smoothies.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Well, hey, Liran, you started as an Amazon seller in 2014, right? Would really love if you could tell us how you got started and then the path that you came down to start Incrementum Digital.
Sure. So actually, yeah, before getting into e-commerce, I had an online insurance agency and had learned like internet marketing and SEO, and was really interested in, finding ways to make money, online digitally. In 2014, I saw a course for a Shopify like drop shipping business. I took it. I started a Shopify site. After a few months, I learned about Amazon FBA and kind of moved over there. And really, the first thing I learned was arbitrage as a model, which basically means kind of like buying low, selling high, like you would do with stocks, except you do it with physical products. So would go out to Nike outlet stores and TJ Maxx and Marshalls and buy name brand products, shoes, Under Armour, Nike, fitness products, send them into Amazon, buy a pair of shoes for, $60, $70 and sell it for, $120. And obviously there's Amazon fees, etc. Right. So it's not all profit, but it really showed me the opportunity that there was in e-commerce. And in that model, I never, knew anything about, private label at that point. And so I learned next about the wholesale model, which was, okay, I'm buying these products at retail, but now I can actually go out to companies, buy in bulk. I know how to sell on Amazon and I could sell their products on Amazon. And that's kind of what I did next, which then led me to learn, learn about the Amazon private label opportunity, which is, okay, I can cut out the wholesaler. I can go make products directly in China, put my own logo, brand name on it, and sell them directly on Amazon without sort of competing for what's called the buy box, which is, if multiple people are selling the same branded products, you're all kind of competing on the listing for price. Starting in 2015, that's kind of what I started doing, was creating my own brands. I actually developed a few design patents on a product to differentiate, and started to really learn about how to create a business. And the opportunity was exciting with private label as well, because sellers would build up a business over 2-3 years and then be able to sell it. And that was one of the opportunities, to build an asset. That was one of the opportunities sort of like not available to you if you're just like reselling somebody else's products. You don't really have a business that you can really sell, because the brand is not yours. And so the opportunity is tremendous. And over the last several years, I've seen so many sellers building up businesses and selling them. In 2016 or so, I started helping another seller who had a course, basically helping sort of newer sellers coming on, which led me to start getting on podcasts like this, etc., speaking, helping sellers, and eventually led uh, to creating an agency, basically to help sellers really starting out with Amazon advertising management as it got more and more complex over the last several years. And now today, kind of with a full suite of marketing solutions for brands and for sellers on the platform.
Wow. Well, I mean, and then obviously you've got you alluded to this a little bit. You guys got the podcast, the e-commerce mindset that you guys do, and that's kind of like the content engine for Incrementum Digital, right? So you have
Yep.
I've heard a lot of the conversations you've had covering everything from like accounts that are getting suspended on Amazon to obviously some of the legal things that you have to consider, even above and beyond just the marketing and the advertising. Well,
Yeah.
so given that you started back in 2014, right? I'm sure you've seen a tremendous amount of change in the past. So what would that be, about 7 years? What are some of the biggest changes that you've seen in the ways that brands or sellers, if there's any difference, have to
Yep.
engage with Amazon?
Yeah. I would say there's been a lot of changes, and both from who the sellers are to the platform itself. So what happened was, 2011, 2012, the 2013, 2014, a lot of sellers joined, and a lot of sellers started with private label. And those sellers proved this model works, that, you can go to China, create a product, put your own brand name on it, sell it on Amazon, and build a business and build a following. And the more traction you got, the more reviews you built up, the more of kind of a moat, you kind of built around that product. Because if today, you want to get into, fitness resistance bands, you have to compete with sellers that have, 20,000, 30,000 reviews. Not so easy. But back then that wasn't the case. So, you can get into these niches, and the sellers prove the model. What's happened since is, because the sellers prove the model, now bigger institutional money has started to get involved since about 2018. What does that mean? It means companies that are actually coming in and acquiring Amazon, businesses and rolling them up, as well as private equity, et cetera, which means sellers today also have to compete against those sellers. The opportunity today is, there's a lot of companies buying up Amazon FBA businesses, and like, it opened up more exit opportunities, and the multiples for the businesses have gone up. So that's been a positive. On the other hand, the sellers have gotten more sophisticated. Also, since 2014 to today, there's more data, there's more software tools, there's better access to better decision making around the products that you're going to launch, and the data. Again, that's good and bad, because your competition is also armed better as well. The platform itself, I would say, when I joined in 2014, if you launched a private label product, advertising was like an afterthought and was not a requirement. If you could rank your products organically pretty easily and quickly. At the time, prior to 2016, you were allowed to utilize incentivized reviews. So you're allowed to, literally give away, 1,000 units of your product to people for free, or with like 99% coupon codes. And then those people would, or 100%, and then those people would write a review and say, I received this product for free in exchange for my, honest opinion. Well, Amazon got rid of that after October 2016. It was a major change. And if you were in it beforehand, you accumulated thousands of reviews, you really benefited from that. So it became harder to accumulate reviews after 2016. Advertising has become more and more important and more sophisticated. So 2014, they may have been 4 spots on page 1, of ads. Today, there's 10 plus spots. And not only that, today, there's other things on page 1 that are kind of further pushing the organic visibility. There's video ads. Those take up 4 spots of what 4 listing spots. There's editorial recommendations, where, Amazon has, third-party publishers kind of writing, best barbecue glove when you're searching for barbecue glove, and giving you 5 or 6 recommendations for value and for durability and different kind of areas. And so there's just less organic spots. Advertising is kind of a must. Advertising has gotten more sophisticated. And then Amazon has given third-party sellers a lot more tools as well. So when I joined, Amazon has a Vine program where you can give product away to up to 30 sort of vetted, trusted reviewers for free, and they'll write a review that was only available in vendor, and now it's available for third-party sellers, lightning deals, coupons, like a lot of these sort of marketing levers were not available. Were not available for third-party sellers and are available today. Today you can build Amazon storefronts. You could just do so much more, and Amazon seems to be sort of embracing brands a little bit more than they did. So I mean, the opportunity is great. You have a lot of marketing levers, but it's gotten more competitive. The level of seller has gotten more sophisticated, and so I would say when I started in 2015, you probably had a decent shot if you wanted to start a product with $5,000. Today could probably still be done, but it's much harder. I think you need somewhat more capital to really kick off a business, especially if you go into more competitive products.
Now, now that was a lot of stuff that's changed in the
Yeah.
past 7 years. But
Yes.
if we shrink that timeline down, even just to the past like 15 months, right, in light of the pandemic,
Yep.
what are some of those specific, again, COVID related things that have changed that maybe you didn't even see coming up to that point?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when COVID first hit, it was very tough for a lot of sellers in the first couple of months. Amazon prioritized essential products only. So, if you wanted to go order, a garlic press or some kitchen tool, well, you couldn't get that product for a month because Amazon was prioritizing only essential products because there was just a ton of demand, right, for masks and gloves and all the PPE related.
Slightly more important things need to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Which you can understand that, right? Like supplements, like certain products, right? Zinc, certain products are going to be more important for people to get, and obviously Amazon didn't expect this. If you think about the warehouses too. Amazon had, employees have to keep 6 foot of distance, and they have to do testing, and they had to shut down warehouses because of COVID cases, etc. So definitely hit Amazon. Amazon hired like 100,000 people or something like very, very quickly with it, and so initially it was an issue. Then sellers benefited a lot, especially if you were in. I would say benefited and probably sold out of products if you were in fitness, if you were in supplements, if you were like in if you sold puzzles, right? Like any products related, like a lot of sellers like sold out of their products, but then had massive supply chain issues because people sold out of products. They had to reorder from factories. Factories were slammed. Factories had to shut down in China. So there have been a tremendous amount of supply chain issues that are still ongoing. There's currently a worldwide shortage of shipping containers, and so shipping rates, you used to pay a few $1,000s, $3,000 for a 40-foot container. Now it's like 15,000. Like the rates, there's just a incredible shortage of shipping containers around the world right now. And shipping rates have never been this high. And then there's all these supply chain issues. The port in Shenzhen just got kind of shut down because of COVID cases. There's just major issues for sellers with supply and inventory. That's definitely affecting margins and the price they need to charge, etc. This past Prime Day, I believe there were less deals on the platform because if you have limited inventory, why run a deal and sell more at a lower margin, right? It's definitely affected sellers. Now, at the same time, COVID is sort of on a big picture scale. Amazon has gained, I think, 50 million new Prime customers. COVID, I believe, heavily accelerated the adoption of buying online. And specifically, if you kind of think about, the people who are at risk most, whereas the older you are, right, the more at risk you are with COVID. So if you're a millennial, 20-year-old, millennial or whatever, you've probably already been using online shopping and you're not as hesitant maybe to go out. But if you're 65 or 75, maybe you didn't adopt shopping online, and you're at the highest risk of going out. So now you're kind of forced to, right, adopt. And also you could think about certain categories that benefited a lot where, you may have bought sort of regular household products on Amazon, but you weren't buying groceries or kind of like food products, right, on Amazon. You were used to still going to, to a regular supermarket, or you weren't doing Whole Foods delivery or these kind of things. So there's been massive adoption of new categories and new audiences that are coming to Amazon, and the pie is certainly a lot bigger. So there's wild, and what that's done is obviously create a lot more demand for sellers, and it's also brought a lot of new sellers to the marketplace. And data that has kind of recently showed up is that those new sellers really didn't affect the sales of existing sellers because the pie grew kind of so much. And so there's been this incredible new opportunity to launch products, bring more products to the marketplace, that I would say if you launched those products in 2017 and 2018, some of those were very competitive and you maybe wouldn't have had a chance, but in the last year you did, because there were so many more people shopping online. What's happening now is some of that is starting to trail off, and that's another thing sellers kind of need to deal with. Some ordered inventory based on the fitness sales they had last year when everybody was at home and canceling their gym membership, and that ordering too much of that, and people sort of going back to the gym and not shopping as much for those products, can also be tough. So there's just been so many challenges in the last year for sellers, but also opportunity in terms of so many new shoppers coming to online, and over 50% of physical product searches start on Amazon. So it's great opportunity.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, if we think even just beyond like buying products online, we think about like telehealth, right? I think pre-pandemic, maybe 1% or maybe less than 1% of the population had ever had a doctor's appointment online, and now that number is above 33%. Right. Yep. And so, I mean, in terms of the people, to your point, that, they didn't want to buy something online, they wanted to go to the store and feel it and experience it before they made that decision. But now, with the wide adoption of technology, they're realizing that they don't necessarily need to do that. So, and you mentioned, right, not only were there more people buying online, but there was, kind of this effect of like gold rush to go sell on Amazon. Right. Yep. So the pie expanded, but I mean, I guess it'd probably be fair to assume that that's not going to happen forever. So do we have risk that some of these product categories on Amazon become too saturated? Or, I mean, are there any potential, risks or issues there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the pie is still growing. Obviously, it's going to slow down in terms of percentage growth, of new customers, but the pie is still growing and will continue to grow. Amazon's expected sales year over year are going to continue to go up, I believe, because online is still a smaller percentage of worldwide retail sales than brick and mortar is. But yeah, certain categories are tough to get into, and certain categories you need more money to get into. And the good thing about Amazon for those that learn and can kind of understand it, there is a tremendous amount of data that's available to you to understand what's happening. And the reason is because Jeff Bezos was kind of brilliant when he started Amazon. Started with books, and books traditionally would have a New York Times bestseller list, right? Where they would rank bestsellers. And so Jeff Bezos did the same thing in books, but he didn't stop like at the top 100 books. He said, I'm going to rank every book hourly based on sales. And he wanted sort of the, Amazon kind of says it's benefit to buyers because, the buyers can see if something is popular. But at the same time, it really drove competition among authors, right? They could see exactly where they were against somebody else in terms of promoting books and everything else. And Amazon didn't stop there. When they launched new categories, they continued to rank every product hourly based on, sort of unit volume velocity. What that does is there are software companies in the space, obviously, that are, doing a variety of things for sellers and their accounts. And because the software companies have the data and on tons of sellers' accounts, they can see what does it mean when you have a book ranked 4,000 or a health and household product ranked 35,000. What does that translate into around estimates for monthly sales. And so there's so much data on Amazon available because of this, bestseller rank, that you can really understand every single product pretty closely in terms of how much it's selling a month. You can understand the amount of search volume there is for keywords. You can look at the review counts. You can also read competitors' reviews, see what people like about a product, what they don't like, how you can improve things. So a tremendous amount of data. So, as far as this, saturation effect, the better you understand the data, the better decisions you can make or understand the market and see if you can come in, and compete. And I think part of it really depends on how much you differentiate a product and how much capital you have and how much you understand, the platform. Because although it's a shopping engine, it's really an algorithm like Google search engine, right? People are kind of typing in things and then stuff shows up. And so if you start to learn, well, how do we think Amazon ranks products, right? What do I need to do in order to show up for these keywords? Where does Amazon pull the SEO? What's important? So, title, for example, is one of the most important areas to put in the most important keywords in like phrase match order. So when you start to kind of learn, you have a better chance to, show up for keywords and, understand what it takes to, rank and kind of get in front of customers, as well as using advertising. But certainly, yeah, if you wanted to get into, fish oil today, you'd need to spend, 6 to maybe 7 figures to break into that market, because you have to lose money for enough time until you build up enough reviews to become relevant.
Right. And, obviously, I mean, I love buying things on Amazon, but we, hear stories all the time of when Amazon's maybe not the best business partner to its brands and its sellers. So, maybe in your words, what are some of the things that someone who's looking to begin engaging with Amazon, or maybe already is, should be looking out for, to maybe not be taken advantage of or fall into any of those traps?
Yeah. You bring up a really good point and a very valid point. Amazon sellers, I would say, have a love-hate relationship with the platform. They have a love relationship because, at the end of the day, you can make money. You have access to millions and millions of shoppers and traffic. You have traffic and you have a trusted channel by customers. And, for the most part, maybe more today, but, I don't think most customers, when they're buying a product and it's available in Prime, the customer doesn't think I'm buying it from, XYZ store that shows up as a seller name. The buyer is like, I'm shopping on Amazon, right? And they have trust and they know they can return and, have no hassles and things like that. So it's amazing. On the other side, Amazon is a giant behemoth of a company. And I was just reading prior to getting on this, a seller support case, potential client gave us access to their account, and I see the back and forth with seller support, and they're like, no, I'm asking about this, and they keep getting an answer to a totally different question. And they're like, no, but I'm asking about this. Can we speak on the phone? And then they keep getting the same answer from seller support, and that's part of dealing with Amazon. I don't think you're going to get taken advantage of, but know that Amazon might take your product down. Recently, Amazon is trying to police more like main images, and what you can put in a main image has to be on a white background. It's supposed to only show the product. I have a product and it has the logo on the product. Well, Amazon took it down because it said you can't have any extra images on the product. I'm like, no, this is the actual logo on the product. Here's a picture. Didn't work. I had to Photoshop the logo off the product in order to get it back up, right? Like, you just have to deal with nonsense because you're dealing with a behemoth, and sometimes that's going to cause stress, and it's challenging. Amazon, again, they could take your product down for some reason. They can suspend you. There's typically solutions and there's ways to overcome all of it, I would say. So for somebody sort of coming in, I would just say, like, the opportunity is great, but like anything, there's challenges involved, and those that make it deal with the challenges and overcome them and understand, like, you're going to have some headaches in terms of dealing with Amazon support. It's just part of the game. And it's something you should be kind of prepared for. If you're a supplement seller, We work with a supplement client that has like 70 different products. I mean, every week they have some kind of issue on a supplement getting taken down. Amazon wants to see certificate, and just something they deal with, and they've developed a system on how to deal with it. Okay, this happens. Here's the SOP for what to say to Amazon or what to give them, and developing the processes around it, and just understanding how to deal with Amazon. And there are also services and experts and things like that. If I got suspended tomorrow, I know who to go to, who can write an appeal, and does this every week with Amazon and for sellers. And yeah, I might have to pay, but I'm going to get back up. So I think you just need to be prepared that sometimes it's like bashing your head against a brick wall. Like there's nobody to talk to. You can't, you're talking to overseas support. They're contracted. They don't always have the tools or ability to help you. It's just kind of how it is. At the same time, again, I think the opportunity is greater than the headache. And so you just need to understand that, it's not a perfect system, but in a sense, Amazon kind of has a monopoly. Meaning if you want to sell online, your options really are Amazon or your own D2C site. You're not going to get massive sales on Walmart. And you might get some sales on Walmart, and you can probably get some sales on Etsy, and you can, depending on your products and other marketplaces, but your potential to drive volume is nowhere near anywhere else but Amazon. Whether that's good or bad, right? I mean, if they had a great competitor, maybe they would change some of their policies around dealing with sellers. I would say they have gotten somewhat better in the last few years. They used to kind of suspend you on the spot. Now they give you like a 3-day warning to write an appeal before they suspend you on some issues. And the truth also, sometimes sellers get suspended, and they should get suspended for manipulating reviews, or just not adhering to the policies too. But you just need to be prepared to deal with the challenges. The opportunity is worth it.
You're playing in their sandbox, but like you mentioned earlier, you get 60% of the shopper search volume because that's where they're starting, as the Amazon search bar. And then I was reading recently about the halo effect of ad spend on Amazon, right? I don't know the exact number, but like $1 of spend on Amazon equates to an increase in either sales or exposure on other channels that you sell on, right? Your own DTC site, other marketplaces. So to your point, you deal with the nonsense, but the reward is there, or can be there. Now, I know this is probably a difficult question to answer because there's a lot of nuance in it. But so when you see or you work with a brand that's just beginning to work with Amazon, right? We think about, fail fast, fail forward. If you're going to do something and you fail at it, it's okay, but you want to move on quickly and learn from it. How long does it take for a brand to realize that, maybe our Amazon strategy is not working and they can pivot? How long does it take for a brand to fail on Amazon if they're going to?
It's quick, it's fast, but I think the problem is sometimes brands don't know why they're failing or what the reason is that they're failing on Amazon. I see, brands all the time, actually some that are doing very, very well in D2C and not doing as well on Amazon, or that are more focused on D2C and just not doing as well on Amazon. Then I look at the listings, and right away I can tell you, the images you have on Shopify should not be the images you have on Amazon, because Shopify people spend time on your site. You're the only brand there. There aren't tons of other products around you, price, all these things. But Amazon, your images need to have infographics because people don't read the text. And, you just need to have a different strategy. And so, when you launch a product, within a couple of months, does this have legs and traction? Now, if you launch it the right way and it doesn't work, then okay, within a month or two. Like my experience has been, if I launch a product and it's an uphill battle from the beginning, then it's probably not going to work. It's probably not the right product, or there's something off. And if I launch a product and even without reviews, maybe I give it a kind of more competitive price because I don't have that. But even without reviews, I'm starting to see some sales. Then I know like I have something. But I think a lot of times brands, they put up products, but they don't know why it's not selling. They drive ads to it. They're not getting conversions. And generally, you either have, sort of one of two main issues: a sessions or conversions problem, right? Like traffic or conversion. You're driving traffic to it, but the traffic is not converting. So then it's something with the listing, the product, the price, the reviews, right? All those aspects. You're creative, or you're getting some sales, but when you look at your sessions and traffic, you're just not driving enough traffic. You're not getting enough visibility, and that's a combination of sort of organic visibility and keyword SEO strategy, as well as advertising strategy. I would say that the launch period on the launch period is the most important period, and you shouldn't just put a product on Amazon if you're not prepared or understand the launch process, because in the first month, the algorithm rewards you much more greatly if you're getting sales velocity and you're getting search results. So the Amazon algorithm has a couple of things built into it. One is a time factor. So if you put a product up today, let's say you have 20 products on your Shopify store, and you put those 20 products up on Amazon, you start working like one by one, and by the time you get to number 20, it's 3 months in. Well, now it has 3 months of sort of negative sales history. And if you want to, get organic ranking, tremendous sales over a 10-day period are not going to be enough. However, on a new product, there is no negative sales history. And so the Amazon algorithm only sees success from the beginning. And so there isn't that time factor. And also, I believe Amazon wants new products to be discovered a little bit more for a number of reasons. One, if a seller has some success early on there, or a product that's they may stick around. It's a threat to existing products. Amazon doesn't want any particular brand to be more important than the platform, right? So, if I suddenly start to rank new products, which again, oftentimes, if you don't have reviews and somebody else next to you has 5,000, you're probably going to have to beat them on price for some time in order to win. That's good for the consumer too, right? So there's lots of reasons why Amazon would want to show new products. And so that launch period of really driving sales velocity is very, very important. And so my advice would be sort of, if you have your own brand, go kind of deep and focused more than just putting your entire catalog on Amazon at once, because you need to give each product, the right creative, the right listing, SEO work done, as well as advertising budgets, and really driving sales on that one product. If you could do it at scale on 20, then you should. But if you can't, you should be more focused as far as like your kind of rollout launch strategy.
So we obviously just talked about kind of what all encompasses the rollout strategy, but so what are some of the key pieces of information that a brand needs to have to craft a realistic ad budget for Amazon?
Well, the first thing, I would say, you need to think about a few things. One, I would say you need to have a great keyword research, right? You need to understand the keywords, you need to understand the search volume, and kind of like what is the potential amount of impressions or search volume that I can have. You generally want to have, keywords related to your product that, have search volume of 10,000, at least some keywords, 10,000 plus searches a month, etc. There's obviously going to be a lot of long tail keywords that have less than that. As far as an ad budget, I would say reverse engineer your ad budget. Think about, number one, what is my ROAS going to be in the first month on a product, and how much sales do I want to drive? So assuming you have unlimited traffic, right, that you can drive, assuming there's more traffic available than the money you have to spend, then think about, okay, my goal for the first month is to drive $10,000 in sales, and I'm expecting that I'm probably going to have a ROAS of 1 in my first month, which is generally not great, but maybe due to lack of reviews, etc., that's going to be my ROAS. So if I want to drive 10,000 in sales, and maybe in my first month, 70% of that is going to come from paid because I'm just kind of getting going organically, then I might need to spend $7,000 on ads in order to get to this target. So I think you kind of want to take some assumptions into play. And then really the 10, 14 days of data within ads is going to give you better indication of how well you're converting, what are your conversion rates, what is cost per click. Generally, I would say you want to have at minimum a conversion rate of 10%, but I would say more so 15% plus. Unless you have, higher price products, $100 plus, then they may have slightly lower conversion rates. But you want to kind of look at your listing and adjust your pricing strategy to try to drive towards that conversion rate. And I would think less about profitability in your first few months on a product, and I would think more about how do I get to X sales velocity so I can get X reviews, in the fastest amount of time, depending on your niche. Do you need 100 reviews to be relevant? Do you need 500 reviews to be relevant? Do you need 1,000 reviews to be relevant? And then thinking about maybe a potential, 5% review rate. How many sales do I need to drive in order to get to 100 reviews, for example? And that should be your kind of your core focus. Again, if it's an uphill battle, if you're not converting early on, then then it's not a traffic problem per se. Then it's something else that's an issue. And again, I would say you can't be as concerned about margin, early on. You really need to give people a reason to buy a product. If you shop on Amazon, I would say go check in your order history the last 10 products you bought and how many reviews they had. Did you buy any products that had 1 review or 2 reviews? Well, that's how the consumer is shopping. And so you really need to give people a reason to buy a product if you are starting out early, without reviews. There are also strategies to drive reviews or to drive a higher review rate. But you want to be careful as well as to not get suspended, within Amazon's terms.
Don't want to get your wrist slapped like we talked about.
Yeah, and with reviews, it's somewhat more serious. Like you'll get suspended, and if it happens again, you may not ever get back when it comes to reviews, because Amazon takes that very seriously. So yeah, you want to understand what are the things you can do, and some of the things you can do are there's a button for every order that you can request a review from a customer. You can also automate that with software. You can use inserts in your product packaging that give a lifetime warranty on the product or some incentive. People go to a landing page or a ManyChat sequence and register. You get their email. You can then ask them for a review. Right? There's strategies to drive higher review rates. We have a client that's in the coffee space, and they have an insert that gives everybody an espresso cup and spoon, and some new flavors of the coffee that the person didn't buy, to every single person that through an insert, and it cost them good amount of money. I saw their P&L. It's like a real hard cost, but I think in the last year they've gotten like 15,000 emails, and now they have a big list to market to launch new products to ask for reviews. Right? It's very, very valuable because Amazon doesn't give you any of that information. You don't get the customer email. You can't just send promotional emails to people through the Amazon messaging system. Like it's not allowed. So again, utilizing more advanced strategies and understanding this, can help you, like you said, also build your D2C site off the back of the Amazon audience. You might send that list, 30% off to buy on our Shopify site, right? And now trying to move that customer over if you want, to your Shopify site. If you think that's going to work, you can also send them back to Amazon. I think the biggest thing is having a direct relationship, with the customer if you can.
Yeah.
So lots of ways to, sort of leverage Amazon as well to kind of build your own assets if you're smart about the way you go about it. Again, obviously they have costs in doing this. It's a client of mine, so they had me go through their funnel, and so I went through it. They shipped me the item. It was, it must cost them like $10 between the product and the shipping, for every customer that they do this for, but they're getting a valuable, asset in return, especially on a consumable product, right? Coffee. So they can continue to market to you. And it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And we talked before about, how the reviews that you have on Amazon are your moat. And so when we look at an Amazon page, there's so many listings that are crammed together, right? I mean, your competitor is centimeters away from you. But it's interesting. I mean, I don't know if you've heard the same thing, right? One of Steve Jobs, I guess, I don't know, business priorities was always we compete against ourselves, right? We aren't going to always focus on what our competition is doing. But we talked a little bit about how if your competitor has more reviews, you may want to beat them on pricing. And I'm sure there are other instances. How much should you be focusing on what your competitors are doing on Amazon? I guess, what are your thoughts? What do you advise your clients in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I would tend to agree with really focusing on your own products and continuing to try to innovate or get better. So we have a client right now. He's in the jewelry space, and he's going through a major overhaul right now, just like making his packaging just so much nicer, right? And he's kind of evaluated his own and other players in the market, and he's going to just offer something so much nicer, and he's going to put it in his images, and he's continuing to innovate. So, I mean, I think you do on Amazon. I think you do need to understand what's happening with competitors, because yes, if you're number one and two with another competitor, and you have about the same price, and they go drop their price by $2-3, you're going to see the effect of that in your sales. And so whether or not you decide to follow is a different, is kind of a different business decision. But you do need to kind of see what competitors are doing. Also, there's a lot of competitor intelligence data that you can pull, right? What keywords, there's tools that allow you to reverse engineer, putting in a competitor ASIN, which is kind of like the Amazon identifier for every product, which is public on the page. Put that into a tool, and it'll immediately show you all the keywords that they're ranking for on Amazon, the search volume of those keywords, and their organic rank position, right? So this is a lot of how we do keyword research when we're launching a new product, or in general doing keyword research and understanding the market, is reverse engineering the top 10 best sellers for a particular product and understanding everything they rank for, their pricing. So it's important to do this, especially before launching a product, right? Imagine you come into the marketplace and you didn't do any of this research, and you come in and launch a product at $60 only to find out everybody is at 30, right? So I think given that it's a marketplace, you do need to watch. But I think what Steve Jobs was saying is that you really need to innovate and focus on your customer. I think some of the problem of the Amazon, or not problem, but Amazon Marketplace just has a lot of sort of Me Too type products, right? There's a lot of people just selling the same thing from potentially the same factories or similar qualities. In those cases, when you have not innovated, you have to watch your competitors a lot more, because like you're kind of selling the same thing. But if you innovated and have some unique IP or unique offering, and the more value you offer the customer, the less you need to worry about what your competitors are doing. Also, the more like an Apple, the more you build your branding off Amazon, the more you don't have to worry about price on Amazon, right? So people are coming to Amazon searching for your brand name. They're coming to buy your product. If you're a couple bucks more than somebody else, they already want your product. They saw somebody recommend it on social media, an influencer, or right, or they saw an ad for it, or somebody recommended. Like, the more your brand is known, you can go and see vitamin C serum and sellers competing on it between 10 and $25, and then L'Oreal might be at 70, right? But they can sell it because they're a brand. They built that branding. So the more you could do that too, the less you have to worry, about your competitors. And obviously Apple, has done an incredible job at like branding and the message, and like, you feel much cooler sitting at Starbucks with your Mac than, with your Dell, right? And that's just how it is, right? They built this culture. And yeah, the more you could do that, the less you have to worry about your competitors.
No, and that's fair enough, right? Develop the brand that people can latch onto, and then you're safe from a lot of the other competition. So, Liran, this has been a fantastic conversation. Where can our listeners get in touch with you to, learn a little bit more about how they can sell profitably on Amazon?
Sure. So our website is incrementumdigital.com. I'll also give my email, Liran, Liran, at Incrementum Digital. I also have a podcast called E-commerce Mindset, and a Facebook group called E-commerce Mindset. You can find and request to join. And I put out content across like LinkedIn and Facebook. Basically, you know, Amazon, there's literally new things. I mean, yesterday, like new things happening every day. Actually, yesterday they came out and said, we heard your feedback and we're allowing you to, Amazon took away the ability for brands to sort of respond to customer reviews. And because, I don't know, they probably just saw too much like, hey, email us and like trying to manipulate the reviews, you know, we'll refund you, like change your review, and Amazon doesn't want that. But they just put out yesterday that now within your Seller Central account, you can go in and see the critical reviews and you can actually comment on them and respond. Like there's actually email templates that they now allow you to send a message to that customer. And that's changed yesterday. It's great. It's great for sellers. A lot of buyers have opted out of that. But again, it's something new, and like Amazon is evolving. Like every month there's new things. And so staying up to date with, you know, some of the podcasts and some of the content in the space is very helpful for me too, right? Like seeing what other people are kind of sharing and seeing out there is very, very helpful. So there's lots of great content people put out on, you know, YouTube and, you know, across the web related to Amazon.
It's a full-time job staying on top of everything that changes, right?
Yeah, it really is. Yes.
Well, hey, I'd love to have you on for a future episode. We can talk, maybe there's, you know, some of the big new things coming on the horizon we can dive in a little bit deeper into.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the time. Have a great rest of your day. That's it for this episode of E-commerce with Coffee, powered by Amber Engine. If you haven't gotten your fix yet, be sure to get more e-commerce brand secrets on our website at amberengine.com. And don't forget to subscribe for more episodes.